I'm Connor Old and welcome to another episode of Masters of Controlled Chaos. And today we're going to be looking at a very interesting director, a director that I wasn't sure about doing. I wasn't sure if he sort of qualified as the sort of topic, the central idea of what makes them great. But he's the director of Leon the Professional. He's the director of The Big Blue, of Lucy, of The Fifth Element. He is none other than Luc Besson. So, welcome back, guys. If you're new to the series, what we do every single week is we break down a new filmmaker, and we talk about the central idea of what makes them great, including what I consider their best movie, and then what I consider my favorite movie of theirs, as well as an underrated movie of theirs. Now, Luc Besson was an interesting pick, like I said in the intro, because I wasn't sure if he sort of qualified as this great sort of director. You know, we have so many directors that I haven't covered that are very easily, sort of these great directors I'm going to cover in the future. I'm thinking about doing Steven Soderbergh or Robert Zemeckis or Woody Allen. Look for those in the future. Those are sort of these seminal directors. But I decided that his new movie is coming out this week, Valerian. And since I already did Christopher Nolan, which you can check out if you're looking for a Christopher Nolan one, I know his movie Dunkirk's coming out as well. But Luc Besson's new movie Valerian is coming out. And I was just so enamored by the trailers that I've seen. I'm actually pretty excited for this movie just by the creativity and the imagination that I've seen in this movie, that I decided, you know what, I'm going to look back into his filmography. And as I look back onto Luc Besson's filmography, I started to respect him more and more and more. And even though he's not my favorite director of all time, I do think, I don't like all of his movies. For me, actually, some of it is like 50-50 along the likes of someone like a Michael Bay. Even though I'm more passionate about Michael Bay's movies, Luc Besson was sort of like a 50-50 guy for me. But that's because I went back and I really just gained a huge amount of respect for him, mostly because he's an ambitious guy. He takes risks, and something like Valerian I think is a perfect example. He can do these smaller movies like Leon, which only took a little while, but then he can follow up with doing something like The Fifth Element, this huge, ambitious like space opera with all these incredible new characters and high budgets. And he's always taking risks and trying to change the film genre and change what it necessarily means. He does sort of a general story, and he's known for being sort of the simplistic hero's journey type stories, but the visuals and the ambition that he's able to create is incredible. And that's why I think he does a great job, and why I'm really excited for Valerian is that sort of space epicness, because in someone like Leon or Nikita, he does sort of that interesting exploration of the underground, of the hitman sort of world, or even something like The Big Blue, the unknown of the sea. But I love his space operas the best because it's just like he can literally create anything once. He's not limited to this world. And I know Valerian is based on a comic book, a French comic book, but not a lot of people know about it. So when they're looking at the footage, they're saying like, this is definitely a movie that I haven't seen before. I don't recognize these characters. This is a whole new world. This is not Star Wars. And that's something I definitely respect, and his ambition to do new things. And, I don't think we would have had Valerian if it weren't for Lucy, which made like $500 million at the box office. It was a huge success, and now he's able to make Valerian, and I'm so happy he is, because I think it's going to tank. I think it's going to do really poorly and bomb, I think. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe he'll do better internationally because he is a French predominant director. That being said, I do think it's going to do bad. I think Dunkirk's going to do a lot better, because it does have that international aspect and sort of the American aspect as well for that domestic results. But that being said, I still enjoy that we were able, even though I didn't like Lucy, I'm excited that we were able to get Valerian, because it is so, it looks, I haven't seen it yet, but it looks very imaginative, and early buzz is that the visuals are incredible, something that Luc Besson is incredible at, and just the creative world that he's able to build. I'm such a sucker for great worlds, and if you can suck me into a world, I'll definitely respect you even more from then on. But just, so he's able to create that, right? But then he's also to create this just incredible creatures and all this different stuff, and the imagination that I talked about of someone like last week, John Carpenter, but also just the ambition that he's able to create. I think it's just an incredible job at doing that. Another thing I was sort of going back to is just the, so Luc Besson, I say I don't like a lot of his movies because I wasn't really a big fan of Nikita. I didn't like Lucy at all. I didn't really like, like The Big Blue that much, sort of got melodramatic and overblown. But for me, why I decided to do this is because he's ambitious, because I respect him more and more, and I respect him because he takes chances, and that's really hard to see. And even though he's for the most part doing original ideas, I know Valerian is not an original idea, but he is trying to do something like that. I still respect him for that. And I do like movies. I'm not trying to say I don't like this guy. I still wanted to cover him because I like movies like Leon, which I think is close to a masterpiece. I do really like The Fifth Element. These sort of movies that's like, okay, yeah, or Le Dernier Combat, this post-apocalyptic movie from way back. He's done these great things, and I really want to just keep on experimenting with him because I know he's going to try to break the format. And I know Valerian's trying to use the sort of 3D as a major thing. So really just seeing that him trying to expand was one of the reasons why I did this episode, because he is a unique director. Okay, so now, this, like I talk about every week, the central idea of what makes him great. Every director has their own trademarks. Some of the trademarks that Luc Besson has is strong female leads, or just female leads in general, whether it be Nikita or Lilu in Fifth Element, Nikita, or Matilda and Leon the Professional, even though that is sort of a back and forth, or Lucy and Lucy. He doesn't have these he has these central female leads, and he's really enamored by that sense. And he was doing this, for sort of equal rights, I guess you can say. Something like I covered Ridley Scott, Thelma and Louise. That wasn't really seen again, but he's still doing sort of his French films in Nikita, and then even Leon, which is it feels like Paris, if you ask me, even though it is in New York and it is an American movie, but it sort of feels like that French movie in that sense. All that being said, though, another trademark of his is great visuals. You just look at the Valerian trailer. If you're not excited for Valerian, just look at the trailer and see the incredible imagination that this guy has. Something like The Fifth Element, just creating this incredible world of these flying cars and all this crazy stuff and the costumes, and he really just goes bonkers and nuts with that sort of stuff, and the visuals for sure amazing. Where he struggles is telling that compelling story throughout the 2 hours, because a lot of times he sort of goes really hard at the beginning, sort of sprints, and then jogs the rest of the way, and so it gets formulaic at the end. But I still think the visuals are there throughout the movie, and even though they're sort of surprising at first, they sort of grip you and pull you into that world, which I really love about Luc Besson, is that world building that he's able to create. And then just a lot of guns and violence, especially in his earlier movies. There's a lot of guns, especially something like Leon. Lucy was that big gun movie, and then Fifth Element was like a space gun movie, but then Leon, Matilda and Natalie Portman was handling guns. There was so many scenes of loading them and taking the silencer off and folding them, and even Nikita, there's that scene where she's in the bathroom and she has to screw on everything, and she has this little box that she has to create into an AUG sort of sniper rifle type thing with a silencer on and a scope, and there's no barrel. She complains about that. The little things. He really loves the meticulous sort of putting together of guns and how they work together in that story, and really works best in his best movies when he sort of really meticulously plans that out. Okay, now let's move over into what I consider his best movie, Leon. Now, what I love about Leon, and why I think this is definitely his best movie by far, it's not my favorite, but it's so obviously the best for me because it's an incredibly well-crafted action movie, because there's incredible characters, an incredible story, and you care about the drama that's going on and the relationship with Jean Reno and Natalie Portman, but you really do care about the action, and the action is incredible in this movie. This is possibly considered one of the best action movies of the 90s, maybe of all time. And there's not a lot of action to it. That's what I really love about it, is that really, I look back at it and I'm like, oh, this is sort of feeling like a Bourne movie, or maybe I don't know, sort of just a John Wick, not even John Wick is a bad example, but like a Taken, like a modern day sort of action movie. Because everything is so close, it almost feels claustrophobic, and the action, the guns are loud, everything's sort of small and intact. I'm a big video game fan. The end scene definitely felt like Rainbow Six Siege, or you're sort of going in and it's, one shot can kill you, and it just feels like hyper-realized in that sense. And unlike something like a Die Hard, which is a 90s action movie, but definitely is different in that way. And actually, another comparison that I think would be a better comparison, almost without the humor, would be Pulp Fiction. Both came out in 1994, both different looks at the hitman genre. Pulp Fiction being obviously the more funnier one, this is being a little more caring one, sort of the caring side to the hitman there. But definitely interesting, and I find that's weird that 94, they both, Pulp Fiction and Leon, took different aspects, they took the central hitman genre, and then Quentin Tarantino put put Pulp Fiction and went one way, and then Luc Besson took Leon and did the other way. Just a quick reminder, if you don't know, there's actually an American cut and an international cut. The American cut's about an hour and 50 minutes. The international cut's about 2 hours and 12 minutes. That's the version I watch. That's just called like Leon, and in the States it was referred to as The Professional. This is just because in Leon, the version I watched, I think the better version, the version to watch, and that's sort of the general consensus on the internet, is that sort of builds a relationship a lot more between Jean Reno and Natalie Portman, Matilda, and Leon, of course, and but then it started to go into this realm of like she really loves him and wants like almost like a sexual relationship, and the American audiences didn't really like that. But that's what the interesting sort of caveat I had to it, because like I was interested in the movie. That sort of weirded me out, I'm not gonna lie, but it definitely was an interesting thing. Like it wasn't necessarily a father-daughter in a sense, even though I sort of got that. I liked that. It was almost like it wasn't father-daughter mutually. It was like Natalie Portman doesn't really know. She's sort of going through puberty. The character's like 12, I think, and she sort of sees Jean Reno as like, oh, maybe I could really love this guy. He took me in or whatever. You know, she maybe sees this idealized a version of it in the movies and whatnot, but Jean Reno is really seeing her as like a daughter figure, and that sort of clash of sort of conflicts I really enjoyed, especially in the longer cut. That being said, I really love the chemistry between the two. You know, you take that aside, it's just a really awesome sort of friendship that they built together, and they really care for each other. They really do love for each other, even though their versions of love are different. So that really adds to the action. When you really care about the stakes of the characters, that really adds to it, because you've built up and you really understand these characters, and you know, just the tenseness of how they go together and they're sort of like young Bonnie and Clyde, right? And they go in, and there's a great sequence of taking the gum and putting it over the sort of door hole, and then Leon's ready there with the iron cutters or whatever for like the bolts to cut that, and they go in, and then Natalie Portman shoots them with a paintball, and then he really shoots them. You know, the practice, the sort of training of that. That's what I really love about these movies, and what I think he does a great job going back into the gun scenario, and even in the sort of montages, he takes the little things. You know, I think he took that from Martin Scorsese, and some of the great directors really know this, is how stuff works. One of the best things about Goodfellas is just seeing how the mafia business works, and the little things of, you know, how do they count the money and who takes this from who to where. It's not just, oh, this is criminal enterprise, and you sort of have to sort of guess how it works. They really break it down to how business works. You know, that's Goodfellas. But a hitman, they sort of go into the hitman-ness of it, of, you know, okay, they did the montage of this is how they do it, this is his job, he's very good at his job, he's meticulous, he's very threatening. And that actually goes to the very beginning of the movie. That I think is the very key difference between Nikita and Leon, two similar movies, but what Leon sort of strives in and Nikita doesn't. Nikita starts the movie and shows how an awful Nikita is, and then we have to sort of gain her trust as the movie goes on. That didn't work for me, because her acts at the beginning, where she kills a police officer and like rats out her friends, it was just like so horrific, and I solely hated her really from the beginning, that I couldn't really learn to love her. It was really only her romance that I sort of got into, but that was an interesting mistake that I think he made. He made Nikita too evil at the beginning, so that I just wrote her off right at the beginning. That's an interesting thing with unique sort of, I like morally complex characters, whether that be, you know, Tommy Lee Jones or Josh Brolin from No Country for Old Men, or, you know, Robert De Niro, Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver, or Oscar Isaac in Inside Llewyn Davis. You know, these characters that are despicable and sort of like assholes, and they're sort of maybe even crazy in the Taxi Driver sense, but you really care about them. And, you know, something like Inside Llewyn Davis does a great job of, he saves a cat at the beginning, and yes, he's an asshole, but you sort of get him, and you know he still has that sort of sense of empathy to him, and that is within the saving the cat scenario. Leon does a great job here in the beginning, where we totally see him like in the shadows. You don't know who this guy is, this elite hitman, and we're in sort of the profiling right beside the criminals, and we're like, where's this guy? He's coming out of nowhere. We're shooting at him everywhere, and we're not killing him. Like, where's this guy going? And he's sort of like this mysterious figure, like a Batman or someone like that. But they do a great job at, he does all that stuff and he kills everyone, and then he puts the knife to the guy. He does his job, make sure that he's warned, and then instead of killing him, he could have killed him, he lets him go. Sometimes Leon, you know, he'll like knock them out or something like that. But just from the beginning scenario, he lets him go. He doesn't kill him just because he's a brutal, a murderer or whatever. It gave him that sense of humanity, that he's not necessarily here to kill people. He's not out for blood. He's doing this because it's his job. People want him dead. That's his job. He's going to kill people. But he's not like this super unempathetic guy, and we could see that throughout the movie, and sort of his sense and his backstory starts to be revealed. But just from the opening scene, we gain empathy for the character, and I don't hate him. I sort of want to like him, and that really made me compelled to the character. Unlike Nikita, where she was so bad from the beginning, I didn't like her. That's a really key thing I want to point out that really built Leon as a great, great movie. And really, just one last point out is Gary Oldman is just being the incredible villain that he is. You know, iconic lines like screaming, "Everyone!" You know, he's sort of like over the top in that sort of sense, but he definitely sort of creates this amazing villain role. Unlike someone like a Die Hard, you know, with Alan Rickman, Hans Gruber, he's not this guy who. Hans Gruber is very sort of subdued, and Gary Oldman's sort of out there in your face and sort of. Like he just goes for it, you know what I mean? I really love that about Gary Oldman, and he really takes sort of a two-dimensional villain on paper and really adds that extra layer to him, and sort of inspired a lot of villains, and he does a great job in this. And he's different because I know a lot of villains recently. He's like, oh, you have to create a backstory for them. You have to say like, oh, this is why they do this, and, you know, give them a reasoning. You know, sometimes that works like Magneto in X-Men movies, but sometimes it doesn't, and it feels like tacky and just like, oh, you're just putting that for, oh, because his family was killed, that's why. It's like, oh, lazy stuff. But I almost like this because Gary Oldman is a bad guy. You know, the only redeeming feature is that he's working for the DEA, and generally the DEA are the good guys, so maybe he's a good guy, and he's helping out the hitman, right? So it's like, okay, maybe, right? But still, he's just so evil, and he's crooked, and it's like, you just hate him to his guts. And sometimes you just need a guy that tells you, this is the evil guy, he has no redeeming features, he is evil. I don't know, I just sort of really like that about that. So now let's actually move over into what I consider my favorite movie and the underrated movie. They're both the same movie, and that is The Fifth Element. This is why I'm really excited for Valerian, because I saw Valerian and I hadn't seen any Luc Besson movies except for Leon. And then when I saw the trailers for Valerian, I was like, whoa, I'm super surprised. I don't really like Cara Delevingne. I don't really like Dane DeHaan. I was like, this is an interesting pick, but it's so weird and so out there. I was like, I sort of liked it, and I sort of really got into it. And the vibe of the trailer was I was really into it. And just really different and fresh, because it wasn't a Star Wars and a superhero in this sort of rehash society. I was really into the sort of interesting characters, and that's what I really love about Fifth Element. I believe it's all original, unlike Valerian, which is a comic book adaptation. This is all original characters that came out of Luc Besson's mind. He created this when he was actually a teenager, 16 years old, and you just see his teenage imagination just going wild and just the craziness. And this movie is so over the top. I really want to make that clear. It's crazy over the top. You have Bruce Willis, the main protagonist, who is the straight man, but everyone else, from Lilu to Chris Tucker's character, the disc jockey guy, to even Gary Oldman and Ian Holm, everyone's just crazy and over the top, and they know which movie they're in, and they're having like such a fun time. I love that sort of sense of it. You know, even Chris Tucker, it's like, oh my God, what movie are you in? But it's also like, yeah, he knows what movies he's in. He knows this is a over-the-top, wacky, colorful, Looney Tunes style space opera with just like crazy wacky visuals, and very much like a B-movie, sci-fi movie with a high production value. You know, it's super refreshing, especially in the day and age of now, where everything's super gritty and dark and depressing, and it's like, oh, let's make Superman, but he's gritty, you know. That's why I thought a lot of people enjoyed about Wonder Woman, because it was sort of colorful and had sort of a joyousness to it. And I actually just saw Spider-Man Homecoming, an amazing movie, one of my favorite movies of the year. I really enjoyed that because it was so much fun and colorful and bright, and it's like, oh, such a grit on your face, ear to ear the entire time, and it really looked great, actually, with beautiful colors and whatnot. And that's what I really love about The Fifth Element, is that it's action and it's craziness and it's spaceness, and you're sort of launched into this world, and you have to pick up things, you know, incredible world building at that. You know, I say it's underrated because I don't think a lot of people like it. You know, this is not necessarily a movie to recommend to a lot of people, but if you're just looking for sort of like a fun, spacey, blockbuster movie, it's a really fun. You might really hate it and be like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. I know a lot of people are like, this looks stupid, you know, oh, this is a stupid movie, I don't like it, whatever. But if you just sort of I hate the term turn your brain off, but like, don't necessarily pick up the little parts of the stories. That's why, you know, it goes a little too long. I could definitely criticize it if I put it on a critic brain or whatever. That's why I don't consider it the best. It's not as lean, as compact and well developed as Leon is, but it's definitely sort of over the top, and just everything's happening. There's so many ideas here that you want to just really enjoy the world, and, you know, talk about lore and stuff like that. You know, it's really hard to build worlds these days that aren't based on other properties, so it's interesting to see The Fifth Element sort of blossom at that and make a lot of money as well. But the thing is that it's almost like a guy who just, he buys into this idea so much. He loves his idea. He's so passionate about his idea that you start to become passionate about it. And the world is so over the top, and it's so like committed to the idea. You're like, oh, okay, come on, I'll come in and I'll commit to, and I'll have a fun time as well. You know, you could resist that, or you could just sort of accept that and be like, this is the world we're in. I'm gonna have a fun time. It's stupid, sort of, but it's a lot of fun, and it's sort of the space opera. And if you're a science fiction fan, this is like typical nerdy sort of science fiction stuff. And even if you're a Bruce Willis sort of fan, you probably won't like it, but it's still a pretty good, solid action movie throughout the movie. Anyways, guys, for all those reasons, that's why Luc Besson is a master of controlled chaos. Make sure you like the video, comment below, let me know what your favorite Luc Besson movie is. I'd love to hear that. Share it with your friends. I'm trying to create a great film community. Feel free to comment. You know, I do respond. So if you have any questions, any recommendations, you know, I'd love to improve the show any way I can. Anyways, guys, I'm Connor Old, and until next time, stay tuned.